while working for my old company, I did have thoughts about doing it at that time. It would have been much easier if I had done it at that time because I was fresh out of college and it was we hadn't started a family yet, so it would have been a little bit easier.
And my standard response to all the students is that if you put in enough time and effort and have a game plan, use effective exam preparation resources, and stay consistent through the ups and downs that life is definitely going to throw at you.
I have a class tomorrow morning. I cannot miss it. I cannot stay. I will constantly be looking at the time. When I go on social visits with my friends. So I was not a fun friend to be around at that time.
Hi, Jaya.
Hi, Wasim.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So, Jaya, thanks a lot for taking time out of your schedule to do this interview with me. Your story, your journey, your exam preparation methodology is very, very interesting. You've had a lot of ups and downs during your preparation, and that's why I requested if you could make some time and hop on this call with me because it would be beneficial for others also to get some inspiration and motivation from your particular exam preparation journey. So, how about we start from your undergraduate, Jaya? So, you're internationally trained engineer. When did you complete your bachelor's?
I completed my bachelor's degree from the University of Chennai in 1999. So it was way back. And then I moved to the US and then I completed my master's here at Portland State University around 2003 timeframe. So I've been out of college for a really long time. And then I was working for a short period of time as an instrumentation and controls engineer in my old company. And then I had to quit for family reasons. We started a family, and then I took a temporary break. So my journey is not typical as an engineer. It had I had several years of break in between in my career, and then I joined as an electrical engineer at a public-owned utility here in Seattle, Washington. And it is when I started thinking about the process of getting into the process of licensing, like passing the FE examinations and the PE examination. While working for my old company, I did have thoughts about doing it at that time. It would have been much easier if I had done it at that time because I was fresh out of college and it was we hadn't started a family yet, so it would have been a little bit easier. But then, for a number of reasons, that did not happen. I had we ha- moved internationally to India from the US, and then we spent a few years there. Um, so those are the kind of things that happened, which postponed my intentions, even though I was intending to do this at the beginning of my career. I had to push it back. And then when the kids were younger, I was on a break from my career. So I basically wasn't thinking about any of this at all. And then once I joined the utility, I was told by my manager and then many others to restart this process again. And that's when I actually came across one of your videos. I was basically on a journey, like I was doing this on my own. I thought I can do it, and then I started with the process, and I realized that I was going nowhere with it. It was my preparation was all over the place. I was out of college for so many years. I wasn't aware of. I wasn't doing anything systematically. So once I got into your course, it provided me with a structure and a much better work ethic and learning habits, and I was able to pass my FE with you after almost 20 years of college last year in May.
Right. And within almost 1 year, you also passed your P power exam in the first attempt. I do remember, Jaya, that when I onboarded you onto the program, or maybe you had sent me an email previously, and the discussion was something like, I have been out of school for a long time. I don't know if I can do it. I'm signing up for your program. Do you think I can pass? And my standard response to all the students is that if you put in enough time and effort and have a game plan, use effective exam preparation resources, and stay consistent through the ups and downs that life is definitely going to throw at you
Mm-hmm.
for an extended period of time, let's say 4 to 6 months, and really depends on what your starting point is. I've had students who have gone through my program pass these exams within a month, right? But statistically speaking, on average, if you're working full time, spending 15 to 20 hours a week, it does take a few months. And that can be 3 months for some folks, it could be 6 months for some folks, it could be even longer, it could be even shorter. But I could recognize right away that there was a willingness, and you were not shy from putting in the time and effort throughout this preparation. And I don't exactly know, but if I were to guess, I think we exchanged over 100 emails. If you Probably even more.
Over PNP, definitely, I think.
Right. When you include all the clarifications, questions, doubts that you asked me for the FE exam preparation section by section, you were using my on demand content, the quizzes, the mini exams, the practice exams, and then you were very active on my community as well for PE Power, attending all the live training sessions. So your FE got completed in May. And in my opinion, I know life events happened between you passing the FE exam and you passing the PE Power exam. But in my opinion, the greater achievement uh, in your case was really passing the FE exam, because that made you go back, way back, 20 plus years into your undergraduate coursework. And if I'm not mistaken, you were not well, the thing is that if you're internationally trained engineer, like I have a lot of students internationally trained, um, the curriculum in the United States and Canada is a little bit different for undergraduate coursework. And if you think about it, like late 90s, software was probably not even mainstream in most of the colleges. Um, and the FE exam really tests you very broadly. So I wouldn't be surprised. Is that a fair assessment, saying that you learned a lot of new topics from zero in my FE program, especially in the computer sections, correct?
Yes, yes. I learned a lot of topics in your FE prep course, as well as while I was doing my undergrad. I was really not, familiar with a lot of these topics that are part of the FE examination now.
Yeah,
Those were
that's what
not
I'm saying.
at that
In
time.
late 90s, there was no such concept, or even computer systems was not necessarily such a mainstream. Obviously, people were doing graduate, postgraduate studies and whatnot, PhDs, but at undergraduate level, it was not considered something that would be taught. It was more around transistors, it was more around motors and transformers, right? Like your
Exactly.
good old power systems, or maybe electronics, right? Or maybe a little bit of communications. So you learned a lot of new stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the most challenging in the FE course, I would say, that I felt was in control systems and digital signal processing, and even to a certain extent, computer architecture. Those are like kind of like I was so many years out of college, and it was so hard to go back and learn all of those things. At least for passing the FE examination, that was the most challenging part. The I would say that circuits and single phase circuits, three phase circuits was a little bit simpler because I've at least learned more about those topics during my undergrad program itself, and to a certain extent even during my master's degree here. Um, that was my specialization, so a little bit it was easier for me. But then all of these other topics were totally new, and it was a lot complex also. I had to put in a lot more effort than like a person who normally out of college would have to. In that case, I had to learn. a lot about using the calculator and all that. Those things didn't come naturally to me, so it was a bit of a challenge in the sense I started studying after such a long time, and it was much harder that way, to get to speed, even to participate in your class, and participate in the discussions and all that. But it also opened a lot of doors for me. The community was not there during the FE program, but during
The student community, I set that up and you utilize it very effectively. And that's why I said like the FE was a bigger challenge for you. Now, you passed the FE exam in the first attempt with me, several months of preparation, utilized on demand content, the live training, and then you enrolled in the P Power program almost right away. But your journey for the P Power exam preparation was not as linear. So you passed the FE in May 2023, and now you've passed the PE exam basically end of May, early June 2024, within 1 year back to back. So, how did you go about your P Power exam preparation? What were the ups and downs that you encountered, and how did you? This is the most important question. How did you keep yourself motivated throughout the process?
Mhm. So after I passed my FE in May of 2023, I think I told you also that I needed a little bit of a break. You were kind of saying, this if you keep the momentum going, it would be easier for you. I remember you saying that to me, but then I said, I needed that break. A little bit of a break for family reasons also, during summer of last year, and I am glad that I kind of did that. It kind of rejuvenated me, and mentally prepared me for the rigor of the PE exam that was to follow, starting from fall of last year, in fall of 2024. Um, so it was kind of an immersion kind of an environment for me. It was about 20 hours a week. It wasn't easy at all. In addition to my responsibilities at home, and then like full-time working, and then other commitments that I had, it wasn't easy doing that at all. But then my progress wasn't exactly linear also. I had life events happening. Life throws a lot of curveballs at you, and then unfortunately in fall of last year, I lost my mother-in-law. So I had to go back to India for that, and that threw me off track. It set me back a lot at that time. But then I continued with the rest of my live training classes, and even though I wasn't participating that much, I did make an attempt to at least attend those classes, and then pick up whatever I could at that time. But then it was a considerable setback for me, and I think I emailed you about it also, saying that um, a lot of things have happened, and I need to kind of step back a little bit, so that you also asked me to join your live training session starting from January, for the sessions that I missed during the fall. So that's what happened. So I joined some of your class live training sessions from January through March also, so that I can catch up, so I could catch up on some of the topics that had setbacks on at that time. Um, and then I attended all of your live training classes from January through March, I guess, or at least the ones that I missed during my first half.
Yeah, so you clearly put in a lot of time and effort. And what kept you going? I mean, you had setbacks, and and I think a few weeks before the exam, you also had an injury, right? And you still kept on pushing yourself. You always had the option of sort of dropping the ball and then maybe revisiting sometime in future, right? But what prompted you? What kept you going? What was that inner voice that pushed you over the finish line and day in day out? Because it's a long journey. At the end, you can look at your passing result and your PE license, and you'd be like, okay, I finally achieved it. But all of the work that goes in achieving that, sometimes we forget how painful it was, right? So during that painful process, what kept you going?
The thing is, I've been in it for such a long time, since September of last year. I wanted to have an out.
Yeah, you wanted to get over with it,
I know.
right?
I wanted to get done with it, and then I've been working really hard. Also, my family was hugely supportive. They are the wind under my wings, literally. Even after writing the exam, I was second guessing myself. I was so upset. I had not done well in a particular question and all that, and they kept telling me, "Oh, my mom, you would pass the exam. Don't worry. You have done a really good job. You have worked really hard. You would pass." And that motivation was what kept me going. I was the friend who would never show up, or like a lot of my social activities came to a total standstill at this point of time. I would either say, okay, I have to study, or I have a class tomorrow morning, I cannot miss it. I cannot stay. I will constantly be looking at the time when I go on social visits with my friends. So I was not a fun friend to be around at that time, at that point of time. But I knew that this was a temporary thing. This had an end date.
Exactly. And you're looking to get that closure. Um, and you are on the West Coast. So we were running the session Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. EST. For you, those were 7 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe with a once or twice, certain exceptions, I believe that you were showing up in pretty much every single class or watching the recording, right? So that level of commitment, level of dedication, it doesn't go unrewarded. And you got the FE done in the first attempt with me, the P power done in the first attempt with me, despite the setbacks that and the curveballs that life threw at you. And despite being out of school for such a long time and having a non-linear journey, right, in terms of your career. So kudos to you, Jaya, in making it happen, in putting in the time and effort. And I'm confident that moving forward, this credential that you've obtained, the recognition that you have received, and the privilege essentially as a PE that you have um, so rightly deserved, and work towards, it's gonna pay dividends in the future, because now you're gonna be um, you're going to start realizing that people are gonna, your colleagues, your employers, your clients, customers, everyone, because of the fact that these exams are so difficult, because of the fact that the process is so rigorous, it automatically brings about a certain level of respect. Okay. And you are a hardworking smart engineer, and I'm confident that you're going to go places. So best of luck with your future career endeavors, and it was great having you in both FE electrical and P power.
Thank you so much, Vasim. I mean, many thanks to you. It was because of you and this wonderful community that I was able to do this, in spite of my injury, in spite of everything.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, Archa.
Thanks.
If you like this video, then please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Feel free to ask me any questions in the comment section of this video below. You can find tons of success stories of my FE Electrical and P Power students over here. And if you want to learn more about preparation of FE Electrical and Computer exam and the P Power exam, then check out these playlists over here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next video.